This story is titled, I Paid My Parents' Bills for 4.5 years, while my sister did nothing. When I asked them to babysit my son. For one night, they refused and preferred to babysit my entitled sister's kid, so I cut them off financially. But a couple of days later, they are begging me to help them. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. What's up, Reddit? Been a long time lurker, but man, I need to get this off my chest. Quick background about me before I dive into this shit show. I'm Jake, 32 male, and I run my own fitness equipment distribution business. Not some dropshipping BS or MLM garbage, but the real deal. We're talking heavy-duty commercial-grade equipment that goes into serious gyms, CrossFit boxes, and professional training facilities. Started this whole thing from literally nothing 7 years ago. Picture this, 25-year-old me, living in a crappy one-bedroom apartment, working out of my garage that could barely fit a car. I'd drive around in this beat-up Ford Ranger, God, I miss that truck, hitting up every gym within a 100-mile radius, trying to build connections. At first, I was just moving basic stuff. Dumbbells, weight plates, resistance bands, anything I could fit in that truck. Those first 2 years were brutal, not gonna lie. I was living off protein shakes and canned tuna, working from 4 a.m. until midnight most days. The amount of times I heard no or we already have a supplier would have broken most people. But here's the thing, every no just pissed me off enough to work harder. I'd go home, research better products, make more calls, send more emails. Sleep? That was for the weak. My big break came when I managed to land an exclusive deal with this European manufacturer that nobody else in the region was carrying. Their stuff was top-notch, and suddenly all those gyms that said no started calling me back. From there, it just exploded. Now I've got 3 warehouses, 28 employees, and we're the go-to supplier for half the serious gyms in the tri-state area. But here's where the story gets complicated. See, while I was building all this from nothing, I had my family sitting on the sidelines, watching like vultures. My old man Mike used to be this hardcore boxing trainer, had his own gym back in the day. Pretty successful too. Taught me everything I know about the fitness industry. But conveniently, right when I turned 18 and was heading to college, he hurt his back. Funny how that injury never stopped him from playing golf or going fishing, but somehow made it impossible to work. And my mom Rachel? Classic enabler. Never worked a day in her life, always had an excuse ready. Oh, I'm too old to start working now, she'd say. She was 52. Like what? People start entire careers in their 50s, but apparently that was just too much for her. And then there's my sister Katie. Holy shit, where do I even start with her? 2 years younger than me, but somehow that translated into zero responsibility in my parents' eyes. This girl has failed at more things than most people even attempt, but not because she's trying, because she doesn't have to face consequences. Let me paint you a picture. While I was pulling 16-hour days, sleeping on a futon in my office, and reinvesting every penny back into the business, Katie was finding herself. She tried beauty school, dropped out after 3 months because it wasn't challenging enough. Translation: she had to show up on time and actually do work. Then she decided she wanted to be a personal trainer. Lasted 2 weeks before deciding it was too demanding. She's crashed 3 cars, maxed out countless credit cards, and somehow always lands on her feet because mom and dad are there to catch her. Meanwhile, I had to have my shit together from day one. When I was starting my business, you know what my parents' support looked like? That's nice, honey. Speaking of money, can you help with the electric bill this month? That this month turned into every month. By 23, I was covering their mortgage. By 25, I was handling all their bills. We're talking utilities, car insurance, property taxes, everything. Family helps family, mom would say, playing that guilt card like a professional poker player. You're doing so well, and we're so proud. It's not like you can't afford it. And like a complete idiot, I bought into it. Year after year, I told myself I was doing the right thing, that I was being a good son, that maybe, just maybe, they'd eventually appreciate it. Looking back now, I can see how fucked up it all was. I was building something real, something legitimate, while they enabled my sister's endless cycle of failures and treated me like their personal ATM. You know what really gets me? Every time I hit a major milestone with the business, opening a new warehouse, landing a big contract, whatever, they'd barely acknowledge it. But let Katie manage to hold down a job for more than 2 weeks, it was like she'd cured cancer. Family dinner, celebrations, the whole 9 yards. Meanwhile, I'm over here transforming a garage operation into a multi-million-dollar business. And it's just, oh, that's nice. By the way, the property taxes are due next week. So let me break down exactly how the money situation snowballed from helping out occasionally to supporting four adults who refuse to work. Like I said before, it started when I was 23. I just landed my first big contract, supplying equipment to a chain of boutique gyms. Finally had some real money coming in, you know? Not buy a yacht money, but definitely pay all my bills and have some leftover money. That's when the calls started. First it was Dad. Hey son, bit of a situation with the mortgage. Just need a little help this month. Then Mom. The electric company is threatening to shut us off, and you know your father's back. They always threw in his back injury, like it was some trump card that justified everything. Meanwhile, my sister Katie is living her best life. Let me give you some examples of the shit she pulled while I was bankrolling our parents. She decided she wanted to be a yoga instructor. Cool, right? Except she demanded Mom and Dad pay for her certification, $3,000. They didn't have the money, obviously. So guess who got the call? But wait, it gets better. She quit after 2 classes because the energy wasn't right. $3,000 down the drain. Then there was the time she got into crystals and essential oils. Not just using them, she wanted to start her own wellness business. Maxed out 3 credit cards buying inventory. When it failed, shocking, I know, guess who had to help out with the credit card bills? If you guessed me, congratulations, you're catching on. But my personal favorite was the sustainable fashion boutique phase. She convinced Dad to co-sign a lease on a retail space. Keep in mind, this is the same man who's too injured to work, but apparently well enough to sign legal documents. 3 months later, the place went under because she spent more time planning photo shoots for her non-existent customers than actually running the business. The rent still needed to be paid though, and since Dad's name was on the lease, yeah, you guessed it. Another call to good old Jake. Son, we really need your help. You know we wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. During all this, I'm still grinding. Expanded to a second warehouse, hired more staff, making real moves in the industry. But every time I hit a milestone, it was overshadowed by some family drama. Landed a major contract with a national gym chain? Sorry, can't celebrate because Katie's car got repossessed, and she needs help getting a new one. Opened a new warehouse? Cool, but did you hear Katie's thinking about going back to school? Spoiler, she didn't. The money thing got so normalized that they stopped even asking. Bills would just appear in my email. Rent, utilities, car payments, insurance, all of it automatically became my responsibility. And if I ever hesitated, oh boy, Mom would pull out the big guns. We're not asking for much, Jake. You're doing so well, and family has to stick together. Dad would go the guilt route. You know I'd still be running the gym if I could. I taught you everything you know about this business. Fact check. He taught me about boxing. I taught myself everything about running an actual successful business. Katie's contribution to these conversations? Must be nice to have so much money you can lord it over everyone. Some of us are trying to find our passion. This coming from someone who hadn't held a job longer than 3 months in her entire life. The real kicker? They started planning their retirement. On my dime. I found out they were looking at condos in Florida. They had the nerve to send me listings, talking about how it would be a great investment for the family. Yeah, because I was the one who'd be paying for it. You want to know how much money we're talking about? Over 5 years I paid their mortgage, $2,400 per month. Utilities, average $400 per month. Car payments, 2 cars, $800 per month. Insurance, home and auto, $350 per month. Property taxes, $6,000 per year. Random emergencies, approximately $25,000 total. Katie's various failed ventures, around $40,000. That's over $175,000. Let that sink in. That's not counting all the smaller stuff. Groceries, phone bills, medical copays. And what did I get in return? A pat on the back and another bill in my inbox. Some of you might be thinking, Jake, you're an idiot for letting this go on so long. Trust me, I know. Looking back, I can't believe I fell for it either. But when you grow up being told that family is everything, that you have to take care of your own, it messes with your head. You start to believe that saying no makes you the bad guy. This is when Jessica, my wife, walked into my life and slowly opened my eyes to just how fucked up my family situation was. I met Jessica at this powerlifting competition I was sponsoring through my company. Not gonna lie, I wasn't even supposed to be there that day. My sales manager caught the flu, so I had to cover the booth. Best damn luck of my life. Jessica wasn't competing. She's a sports physical therapist who works with professional athletes. She was there with one of her clients, this absolute unit of a guy who ended up breaking 3 state records that day. I noticed her because, unlike most people at these events, she was actually interested in the equipment specs, not just the flashy branding. She came to my booth asking about the knurling pattern on our competition bars. Not the typical, how much does it cost, or does it come in different colors? She wanted to know about grip diameter variations and their impact on different lifting styles. I'm not going to front. It was hot as hell having a woman who actually knew her stuff. We got talking, and next thing I know, we're having coffee after the event. Turned into dinner, which turned into more dates, and man, it was different from the start. This woman had her shit together in a way that made me realize how much chaos I'd normalized in my life. Here's the thing about Jessica. She grew up in a normal family. Like, actually normal. Her parents worked regular jobs, supported her through college, but expected her to handle her own life after that. They're proud of her success, but never ask her for money. Wild concept, right? At first, I tried to keep my family drama separate from our relationship, but when you're dropping thousands every month on other people's bills, that shit tends to come up. The first time she heard about my family obligations was about 3 months into dating. I had to cancel our plans because Katie had another emergency. She'd bounced a check at her kid's daycare, and they wouldn't take him back until it was paid. Mom was crying about how they couldn't watch him because of Dad's back. Funny how that back injury only acts up when there's work to be done. So there I was, about to transfer another grand to fix my sister's mess. Jessica just sat there, listening to me explain this like it was normal. Then she said something that hit me like a truck. Jake, you know that's not your responsibility, right? Simple words, but man, they stuck with me. Because in my family, everything was my responsibility. Business going well? Time to pay more bills. Got a bonus? Better help Katie with her latest scheme. Finally saved up for that new equipment line? Sorry, Mom and Dad need a new roof. Jessica started noticing patterns I'd been blind to for years. Like how my parents only called when they needed something, or how every family dinner turned into a presentation of bills and urgent needs, or how Katie could drop $500 on some MLM scheme, but somehow couldn't pay her own electric bill. Then we got married. Small ceremony. Mostly her family and my close friends. My family? They showed up late because Katie had a crisis that morning. Something about her ex not taking the kids when he was supposed to. Dad spent the whole reception complaining about the venue's chairs hurting his back, but managed to hit the dance floor just fine after a few drinks. The real eye-opener came when Mason was born. Man, holding my son for the first time, it changed everything. I looked at this tiny human and thought about the example I was setting. Did I want him growing up thinking it was normal to be used by family? That success meant becoming everyone else's piggy bank? Jessica's parents were amazing with Mason from day one. Regular visits, always offering to help, never asking for anything in return. Meanwhile, my parents couldn't be bothered unless it was convenient. Mom would cancel plans last minute because Katie needs emotional support after another failed relationship. Dad would promise to come by, then no-show because his back was acting up. The one time they did watch Mason, all they did was complain. He's so active, Jake. Not like Katie's kids, they're so well behaved. Yeah, because her kids spend all day on tablets while my son actually plays and explores like a kid should. I started noticing how they treated Mason differently from Katie's kids too. Katie's kids got lavish birthday presents and constant attention. Mason got whatever was on clearance at Walmart, if they remembered it all. Last Christmas, they spent $300 on presents for Katie's kids. Mason got a $20 gift card to Target. Jessica saw all this but never pushed me. She just asked questions that made me think, why do you think they treat Mason differently? Or, how would you feel if Mason grew up and someone treated him the way they treat you? Now here's where it all imploded. Let me set the scene for you. It's a Wednesday morning, and I'm in my office prepping for the biggest meeting of my career. Dick's Sporting Goods was interested in a national distribution deal. We're talking 8-figure contract potential. Game-changing stuff. I'd been working on this deal for months. Had all my numbers ready, samples prepared, everything down to the smallest detail. My suit was pressed, my presentation was perfect, and I was feeling confident. Then my phone rings. It's Jessica. Now my wife never calls during work hours unless it's serious. She's got this pro baseball player she works with. Guy's recovering from Tommy John surgery, crucial point in his rehab. His agent called, needed her in Chicago ASAP. Private jet was already arranged. This is the kind of career opportunity she couldn't pass up. No big deal, right? We're successful adults. We can handle schedule changes. Except our nanny had called in sick that morning. Stomach bug going around the daycare. Mason was at Jessica's office, Playing in the kid area she set up for when clients bring their children. Like I said, my wife thinks of everything. We just needed someone to watch Mason for one night. One fucking night. First person I called? My mom. I figured this was a no-brainer. Both my parents are unemployed, by choice. They live 15 minutes away, and they're always talking about how much they miss their grandson. Plus, I've only been paying their bills for 5 years. The conversation went like this. Me. Hey, Mom, I need a favor. Got this huge meeting. Jessica has an emergency with a client. Can you and Dad watch Mason tonight? Mom. Laughs. Like actually laughs. Oh, Jake, sweetie, we're not babysitters. We raised our kids already. It's not our job to take care of yours. I'm sitting there in my office, still in my $2,000 suit. First one I ever bought, felt like I needed to look the part for this meeting. Just staring at my phone. 5 years. 5 years of paying their mortgage, utilities, car payments, random emergencies. 5 years of being their personal bank. And this is what I get? But something felt off. You know that gut feeling when things don't add up? Maybe it was all those years of checking inventory numbers, but something wasn't sitting right. I told my assistant to reschedule the Dick's meeting. She thought I was crazy. This was huge. But here's something I've learned in business. Trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it usually is. I got in my truck and drove to their house. Didn't call ahead, didn't text, just drove straight there. Their driveway comes into view, and guess what I see? Katie's beat-up Honda Civic parked right there. On a Wednesday afternoon when she's supposedly at work. Now let me tell you about their house. It's this nice 4-bedroom in a good neighborhood. Why do they need 4 bedrooms when it's just them? Because I'm paying for it, that's why. They insisted they needed the space for when family visits. Funny how the only family that ever stays there is Katie when she's between apartments. I walk up to the door, don't even knock. Why should I? I'm paying the mortgage. And what do I find in the living room? My parents. On the floor. Playing with Katie's kids. Katie's sprawled on their $2,000 couch that I paid for, scrolling through her phone. Mom and Dad are down there with building blocks, looking like the picture-perfect grandparents. Jake! Mom jumps up like she's seen a ghost. What are you doing here? I'm standing there in my suit, looking at this scene, and something in me just snaps. But not in a yelling way. In this weird, calm way that's almost scarier. Funny, I say, my voice level. I thought you weren't babysitters. Katie rolls her eyes without even looking up from her phone. Some of us actually need help sometimes, Jake. Not all of us can be perfect like you. That's when Mom starts with the excuses. This is different, honey. Katie had a migraine. She just needs to rest. A migraine. A fucking migraine. A migraine, I repeat, my voice still eerily calm. She has a migraine. So you drop everything to watch her kids. But when I'm the one who's been paying your bills for years, who needs help for one night for an emergency? Suddenly you're not babysitters. Dad, who's been real quiet this whole time, starts rubbing his temples. Son, you're making too big a deal out of this. Your sister needs help. And I don't? My voice finally cracks a little. I have the biggest meeting of my career. Jessica has an emergency with a client. We need one night of help with your grandson. But I guess that's too much to ask from the people whose entire life I've been financing for the past 5 years. Katie finally looks up from her phone, that smug little smirk she always has. Must be nice to have so much money you can hold it over everyone's heads. Some of us actually struggle, you know. That's when I lost it. Not in a screaming way. In a finally seeing everything clearly way. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and pulled up the numbers. Let's talk about struggle, Katie. Let's talk about the $175,000 I've given Mom and Dad over the past 5 years. Let's talk about your loans that never got repaid. Let's talk about how you haven't held a job for more than 3 months since high school, but somehow always have money for new clothes and hair appointments. The room got real quiet. The numbers I'd just thrown out there, $175,000, were still hanging in the air like a bad smell. And for once in her life, Katie didn't have a smart comeback. But my mom? Oh, she switched tactics real quick. It's like watching a master manipulator at work. First comes the guilt. Jake, honey, you're making us sound like terrible parents. After everything we've done for you, I cut her off right there. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Because from where I'm standing, I've been carrying this entire family since I was 23. So please enlighten me. What have you done besides take my money and treat me like an ATM? Dad tried to step in with his peacemaker routine. Now, son, you know that's not fair. I taught you everything you know about this business. That's when I actually laughed. Like genuinely laughed. You taught me about boxing, Dad. I taught myself everything about running a business. While you were nursing your convenient back injury, I was working 16-hour days, sleeping in my warehouse and building something real. The only thing you taught me was how to spot bullshit. And right now, I'm seeing it clearly. Katie finally got up from the couch, doing that thing where she tries to make herself cry. You're such an asshole, Jake. Just because you got lucky with your business doesn't mean you're better than everyone else. Some of us have real problems. Real problems? I walked over to the window and pointed at her car. That Honda Civic? I paid for it when you wrecked your last car. Those designer shoes you're wearing? Probably bought with the loan you got from mom and dad last month, which really means my money. Your kid's private school tuition? Yeah, that's coming from the money I give them too. So please tell me more about your real problems. Mom started crying at this point. Not the fake tears she usually uses, but real angry crying. How dare you throw this in our faces? We're family. Family helps each other. Family helps each other, I repeated. Funny how that only goes one way. Where was the family help when I was starting my business? Where was the family help when I needed a co-signer for my first warehouse lease? Where's the family help right now when I need one night of childcare for your grandson? That's when Katie dropped the bomb that finally made everything crystal clear. Well, maybe if you hadn't moved Mason's daycare to that expensive place across town, he could go to the same one as my kids. Then we could help each other out. I turned to her slowly. The expensive place across town? You mean the one that actually has qualified teachers and doesn't park kids in front of iPads all day? The one that costs exactly what I used to spend on your monthly emergencies? Is that the one you're talking about? Then I turned to my parents. And you two. Let's talk about that back injury, Dad. Funny how it only acts up when there's work to be done, but you can play golf every Wednesday with your buddies. Or Mom, how you're too old to work, but somehow manage to go on shopping trips with Katie 3 times a week. My dad actually had the nerve to look offended. My injury is real, Jake. You know that. Is it? Because I've got a friend who's a sports physical therapist, you know, my wife, and she says it's pretty miraculous how your injury only seems to affect you when it's convenient. The room got real quiet after that. The kind of quiet where you can hear everyone thinking, trying to figure out their next move. Katie's kids were in the other room, oblivious to everything, probably watching videos on the tablets I'm pretty sure I also paid for. That's when my mom tried one last time. Jake, sweetheart, I think you're overreacting. We can talk about this like adults. Maybe if you're feeling overwhelmed with the bills, we can work something out. And there it was. Not an apology. Not an acknowledgement of how they'd used me. Just another attempt to negotiate terms that would let them keep taking advantage of me. You know what? Keep the money. Keep the house. Keep pretending you're the perfect parents to Katie while treating my son like a second-class grandchild. I'm done. Katie scoffed. Yeah, right. You always say that, but you'll cave. You always do. I looked her dead in the eye. Not this time, sis. You want to know why? Because I finally see you all clearly. Mom and Dad aren't unable to work. They're unwilling. You're not struggling. You're lazy. And I'm not helping family. I'm enabling parasites. The look on their faces, man, if I could bottle that moment. It was like they finally realized the gravy train had hit the station. I walked out of that house feeling lighter than I had in years. But this wasn't the end. Oh no. This was just the beginning of their worst nightmare, facing actual consequences for their actions. I didn't sleep much that night. Jessica got home late from Chicago, found me in my home office going through years of financial records. She took one look at my face and knew something was up. When I told her what happened, she just nodded and said, "So what's the plan?" That's my wife. No drama, no, I told you so, just straight to solutions. By 3 a.m., we had everything mapped out. I'm talking spreadsheets, documentation, the whole 9 yards. The next morning, I went nuclear. First stop, my accountant's office. Poor guy nearly had a heart attack when I showed him the total amount I'd gifted my family over the years. Jake, he said, looking at the numbers, this is more than some people's retirement savings. Yeah, no shit. He helped me document everything. Every transfer, every bill payment, every loan. Next up, my lawyer. Remember that Dick's sporting goods meeting I rescheduled? The universe has a sense of humor because my lawyer's office was in the same building. Got the business deal sorted in the morning. Crushed it, by the way. Then spent the afternoon legally protecting myself from what I knew was coming. Then came the fun part. One by one, I started canceling everything. Their mortgage autopay? Gone. Utility bills? Canceled. Car insurance? Bye-bye. Credit card payments? Not my problem anymore. Property tax account? Closed. Cell phone family plan? Hope they like prepaid. Here's the thing about cutting people off. You have to do it all at once. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid. You can't half-ass it, or they'll find ways to guilt you back in. So I went all in, sent them one text. You're on your own now. Figure it out. Then blocked their numbers. All of them. Mom, Dad, Katie, even their landline. Because yeah, I was paying for that too. The meltdown was biblical. Within hours, they were blowing up every possible channel. My work phone, 47 missed calls. Email, inbox looking like a spam folder. Jessica's phone, they tried that too. The office landline, my poor receptionist deserves a raise. Mom's first email was exactly what you'd expect. How could you do this to your own family? We're going to lose everything. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. Katie's kids need stability. Notice how there wasn't a single word about Mason? Nothing about how they treated me or any acknowledgement of their behavior. Just panic about losing their meal ticket. Dad tried the business angle. Son, let's handle this like businessmen. We can work something out. Maybe set up a payment plan. A payment plan. Like I was some credit card company they could negotiate with. But Katie? Katie went full nuclear. Started calling my employees, trying to get through to me. Showed up at one of my warehouses, causing such a scene that my loading dock manager, former Marine, great guy, had to escort her out. She was screaming about how I was destroying the family, how her kids would suffer, how I was just jealous of her free spirit. The best part? My lawyer had already drafted a cease and desist letter, one threatening letter about harassment later, and suddenly Katie remembered how to act like an adult. Then came the financial reality checks. Turns out when you've been living on someone else's dime for 5 years, you forget how bills actually work. Within 2 weeks, their perfect little world started crumbling. Dad's back injury mysteriously improved enough for him to start looking for work. Mom discovered Indeed.com exists. Katie had to cancel her wellness retreat, aka spa weekend. Their country club membership lapsed. The lawn service stopped coming. Their favorite restaurants stopped seeing them. My security team, yeah, I have one of those now, running a successful business means taking precautions, reported that Mom and Dad were actually seen entering, wait for it, a job fair. The horror. But here's the real kicker. Remember that Florida condo they were looking at? The one they expected me to buy for their retirement? They had already put down a refundable deposit with my money. When they had to back out, the realtor called me to return the deposit. Apparently, they'd used my business email for the correspondence. That money went straight into Mason's college fund. The cherry on top? Katie's ex-husband reached out to me. Turns out she'd been telling him I was helping with child support, so he didn't have to pay as much. Yeah, that information went straight to his lawyer. Was it harsh? Maybe. But you know what's harsh? Using your own kid as an ATM while treating his son like a second-class citizen. Taking advantage of someone's success while contributing nothing. Playing favorites with grandkids based on which parent you can manipulate better. And this was just the beginning. 3 months after I cut them off, the reality of their situation finally sank in. Their perfect little world, completely shattered. Let me break down how each of them faced the consequences of their actions. First up, my dad. Remember that mysterious back injury that made work impossible? Funny how quickly it healed when the money stopped flowing. A buddy of mine who owns a local gym told me Dad came in looking for work. Mom's transformation was even better. After 15 years of being too old to work, she suddenly discovered she was perfectly capable of holding down a job. She's now hostessing at Applebee's. Yeah, the same Applebee's where she used to complain about the horrible service and leave 5% tips. Karma's got a sense of humor, I'll give it that. But Katie? Oh man, Katie's storyline is my favorite. Remember how she was always finding herself and starting new ventures that I ended up paying for? Reality hit her like a freight train. Her ex-husband's lawyer used the information about her lying about child support to reopen their custody agreement. Turns out judges don't look kindly on parents who lie about financial arrangements. She had to move back in with Mom and Dad because she couldn't afford her apartment anymore. 3 adults, 2 kids, all crammed into that house I used to pay for. The same house that's now in pre-foreclosure because, surprise, they can't actually afford it on their own. But here's where it gets really good. Last week, they tried one final guilt trip. Mom posted this epic sob story on Facebook about how her successful son abandoned his struggling family. Let me share some choice quotes. It breaks my heart to see how money can change a person. My own son, who I raised and nurtured, has turned his back on us in our time of need. We're struggling to put food on the table while he lives in luxury. What kind of person abandons their own parents? Their own sister? The comments were exactly what you'd expect. All these people who don't know the real story jumping in with, "That's terrible." And how could he do that to his own mother? And my personal favorite, family is everything. So you know what I did? I dropped the receipts. All of them. I made a single post, totally professional, just stating facts. In the interest of transparency, here are the financial records of my support over the past 5 years. Then I listed everything. Every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every loan to Katie, the total amount that went to her failed ventures, the cost of their cars, everything. Then I added the screenshots. The text from mom laughing about not babysitting Mason, the emails about the Florida condo they expected me to buy them, Katie's messages demanding money for her various schemes, dad's golf club membership renewal that somehow took priority over his grandson. The fallout was beautiful. Family members I haven't heard from in years started reaching out. Not to guilt me, to apologize for believing their side of the story. Turns out mom and dad had been painting this picture of me as their loving, supportive son who was happy to help the family. Nobody knew they were basically extorting me. Katie's ex-husband's lawyer hit the jackpot with all this evidence. She's now working 2 jobs, actual jobs, not wellness coaching or whatever her last scheme was, to make her child support payments. She's at Target during the day and waiting tables at night. Apparently, she had a meltdown when they made her wear the red polo shirt instead of letting her express her individual style. Last weekend, I drove past their house on my way to Mason's Little League game. The lawn's overgrown because they can't afford the landscaping service anymore. Dad's precious Mercedes got repossessed. Now he's driving some beat-up Corolla. Mom's designer handbag collection has mysteriously disappeared from her Facebook photos. But you know what? I don't feel bad. Not even a little bit. Because while they're dealing with the consequences of their actions, I'm building something real. That money I used to waste on them, it's going into Mason's college fund, into growing my business, into things that actually matter. Jessica says I should feel proud for finally standing up for myself, but honestly, I just feel free, like I can finally breathe. Mason's never going to grow up thinking it's normal to be used by family. He's never going to think his worth is measured by how much money he gives away. And my parents and sister? They're finally learning what the rest of us knew all along. The real world doesn't care about your excuses. It cares about what you actually do. They made their choices. Now they get to live with them.